Good morning, PowerCon 2017. Hey, nice. My name is Duvien Ho. I'm the moderator today. I run a little blog called Damaged Goods for movies and comics and 80s stuff. So today we're going to do a live commentary of Master Universe in 1987. And what a great turnout. Is this anyone's first PowerCon? Nice. All right. And anyone travel from outside Los Angeles to be here? Oh, wow. Look at that. All right. Anyone outside California? Oh, wow. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, we're still missing Chelsea Field, but we're going to get started and get some introductions going here and get this underway. So our first guest right here, we've got Mr. Gary Goddard. So he directed the film, held it together. Former Disney Imagineer, worked in Broadway, worked in film, also designed several large-scale attractions. Ever been on T2 3D or Jurassic Park at Universal Studios? That's this guy right here. Also did Captain Power and Skeleton Warriors on TV. And then next to him, we've got Mr. Anthony Longis, who played Blade. Of course, this man, a man of many talents. He's also a sword master, whip master, screen combat guy, bad guy in a lot of movies. Roadhouse, also taught Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer how to use the whip in Indiana Jones and Batman Returns. On TV, what's that? It's a living. It's a living. There you go. And, oh, there we go. And he's also doing. You're also doing a little demo.
Tomorrow, 2:30 to 4:30.
All right.
In here.
Do not miss it.
So we'll be dodging chandeliers and all kinds of stuff. Please come in. Thank you, sweetheart. This is my wife, the lovely Dr. Mary DeLongis. She's the brains of the outfit, PhD in cellular biology. I'm the circus she ran off to join.
And then next up, we've got Meg Foster, who played Evil-Lyn, Skeletor's. I don't know how to describe that. Half kind of confidant, half maybe love interest, but you know, some great scenes in the movie. Of course, you know her from TV and screen. You've seen her in Miami Vice, Hercules, Xena, Osterman Weekend, They Live, Blind Fury, Best of Best 2, Man in the Iron Mask. I will. And then we've got Mr. William Stout at the end there, our production designer. Another man of many talents, has worked in film, TV, and comic books. You've seen his stuff from Raiders of the Lost Ark to Michael Jackson's Thriller video, spent some time in Antarctica, and also worked in films like First Blood, Conan the Barbarian, and The Prestige. And so I think I see Chelsea Field walking in the door, so we'll give it one more second. There we go. Come on in, come on in. So Chelsea Field walking in right now. Everyone give her a round of applause. She, of course, played Tila in the film, and it was one of her first film roles, and then she was also in stuff like The Last Boy Scout, Harley Davidson and Marlboro Man, on TV, stuff like Tales of the Crypt, Cold Case, NCIS. So welcome. Come on up right here. All right. So basically, like I said, the movie's gonna be playing over here, and I'm just gonna kind of prod these people over here to, get some memories and get some production stories for you. And yeah, let's go ahead and should we get started? Well, I guess you got two screens, so you can watch on either side. All right. So let's just start. I'm gonna say personally that this is one of my favorite films of all time. It was my first movie in a theater. I was 5 years old in 1987 when I saw it. Loved it then. Loved it now, or still love it now. So I'm very excited to be here. And Brian, should we just go? All right, let's do it. Master Universe live commentary. Let's go. Gary, maybe you want to just start us off. I mean, basically, how did you get involved with the film, and were you aware of Canon Films as kind of like this was their last-ditch effort into kind of making prestige films?
No, none of that last-ditch stuff was apparent at the time. That reared its head much later. But what happened was they were looking for a director, and I actually called Ed Pressman, and we met. And he said, "What makes you think you can do this?" And I said, "Well, I did the Conan Spectacular up at Universal, and I understand this genre." And he and the writer, David Odell, went to see Conan, came back and said, "Yeah, we think you can do it. But there's one more thing. Mattel has approval rights on the script and on the star, and they've approved the script and they've approved the star, which was Dolph Lundgren, but they have to approve the director." And I said, "Well, I don't think you'll have a problem there because I'm currently consulting with Mattel on a lot of their toys and stuff, because I had left Imagineering and had my own company, and we were working with Milton Bradley. A little known fact is we designed the characters for the Candyland game, so all of you that played Candyland, King Candy and all those things, I am King Candy, and And all of those characters were the people that were working for me. The character designer, Rebecca Mills, who did the characters, she's Princess Lolly, and Grandma Nut is Terry Cardinelli, who was a sculptress, and on and on. And my partner, Tony Christopher, in the company is Lord Licorice, the villain. And so anyway, we've been doing a lot of consulting for companies, including Mattel. And I said, I think Mattel's only concern is they have a director who will understand the brand and not do anything that would make the brand bad. And I was right. He called, Ed Pressman called me and said, you're right. They approved you. And Ed said, we have a movie now. We have a director, star, and a script. We're going to make this. So that's kind of how it happened. I'm talking very quickly to get done before the credits are done. So.
Well, let's just go ahead and go down the line then. Chelsea, you want to tell us how you got involved in, I know it's one of your first film roles, so you want to tell us how you got involved in acting and into the film?
Well, it wasn't one of my first. It was the first in terms of acting. I had been a dancer for 10 years, working professionally, and had done commercials as an actress, but the audition process was brutal. I must have read for it like 25 times.
Yeah, because she was a first-timer and I had to fight for it.
He did.
You're leaving out the Conan part.
Oh my God. Okay, do I have time for that story? Okay,
Yeah,
so
quick.
Gary knew me because I had auditioned for Conan the Barbarian, which was a live show at Universal. And it was right at a time when I had come back to LA and I was trying to find work, and I had I quit my band and I couldn't get work. So it was kind of right in between acting and dancing, and I didn't really want to dance anymore, so Conan the Barbarian at this live show was perfect. And I went to the audition, and I was so desperate because I had not worked for 2 months, and I basically had said, I'm either going to get work or I'm putting my band back together and going out on the road. And that was like my little prayer, and I show up, and Gary's saying, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you throw a back handspring? And I go, sure, I can throw a back handspring, which I had not thrown in probably 10 years. And I threw a back handspring. I think I actually did it without breaking my neck, but it was pretty scary. And I went up to him afterwards and I said, I will do anything for this job. Now, of course, he misinterprets that and makes it some sexual term, I'm sure. And I was thinking literally like, I'll do a backflip if I have to. And I got offered the job, I think. But at the same week, I got offered Solid Gold and an NBC affiliates show as a dancer, so I ended up taking Solid Gold.
But I remembered her when I was seeing all the women for the role. I needed a woman who could be very sexy, be very feminine, but yet be strong, and be able to hold a gun and be able to look like she could hold a sword. And she grew up with brothers, and she had all of her. So anyway, but now we're in this great scene that Bill designed, and Meg looks fantastic. So I think they should talk about this.
Yeah.
Meg, you want to talk about being
Let's
Evil-Lyn?
watch it. Haven't seen it in a long time.
Were you aware of the cartoon before you were cast?
I beg your pardon?
Were you aware of the cartoon and the toys before you were cast in the
You
film?
know I was, because I have a son.
Okay.
And my son was tiny and mighty. And I was invited to audition. And I really... well,
Look, Meg, look.
yes,
Look, because you're coming up.
it's beautiful. And I was so worried for Christina.
See? Oh, my God, look at her.
Well, I love boys. What can I say?
People of Eternia, the war
And William, you want to talk about just this giant, awesome set of the Castle Grayskull?
The sorceress of Grayskull is my prisoner. And her
We are.
There we go.
That set was the biggest set seen in Hollywood in about 30 or 40 years. We took 2 sound stages. I knocked out the wall between them to build that gigantic set, and it became, the business it's a small world, and everybody in the film business wanted to come to see that set and get their picture taken, seated on the throne to all the power of the universe.
Very nice.
Including Michael Jackson, who was next door shooting at that time Smooth Criminal.
And Madonna.
Yeah, and I was there on a Sunday morning. The Sunday morning before we were going to shoot on it for the first time on Monday, we just shellacked all the floors to give it the marble shine. And I'm there with the DP, and I don't know if you were there, Bill, but there was a few of us there planning the first day shoot. And all the entrances were taped off, so no one would walk on there with shoes and mess it up. And there's this guy, looking through there. It was like, and he had his little mask on. And I said, Michael? Oh, no, I don't do that. Yes. No, I'm the director. It's okay. You can walk on the set. Just take your shoes off. No, I don't want. No, it's fine. Just take your shoes off. You can look at all you want. So he wandered around, and that's when he invited me next door to the shoot, for which I went over a couple times to see them shooting Smooth Criminal.
Yeah, which was being done by Mike Klug.
That's right. Yeah.
And then Anthony, you want to tell us a little bit how you got involved with the film? Were you cast as Blade first, or were you? Sorry. So I was just saying, how did you get involved with the film? Were you cast as Blade? Were you there for the weapons and the training, or what? How did it come for you?
I remember I came in and I read for Gary, and people often ask me about this because the character of Blade doesn't really appear in the cartoons and stuff like that. So I kind of had a blank check, and I guess Gary liked what I was doing because he left me alone pretty much. Every once in a while he'd give me a piece of direction or ask for something, but otherwise he seemed to like what I was doing.
Yeah, well, what I remember is I really liked him, and he could do the swords. There was, I created this character, so in my head I knew what I wanted Blade to be, and I think we had the sculpt at that point. We showed it to you, didn't we?
No,
Okay, so you didn't know about the ballpark till I called you. Okay, so I called him personally and said, "Look, I really like you. Want you for this part." And he had actually even longer hair back then. And I said, "You got to shave your head. Are you up for that?" And he was like, "Oh, I got to talk to my wife," or whatever. I don't know. I'll call you back. He calls back, goes, "Can't we do a skull cap?" I said, Nah. You're gonna have to. No skull cap. You're gonna have to shape. And he did anything for the part. See, the right guy.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. That's funny because I remembered it a little differently. I remember, that we had our meeting, had a reading, and the next thing we were talking about, my shaving my head. And it was either shave my head or bald cap, and I was told that it means you'll be an hour or two in the chair every day, and I said shave my head. so I was in and out of makeup in about 20 minutes.
There you go. That's good. However, we got there.
Oh, sorry.
It's very funny. You mentioned Conan and stuff. I took over that show the last 3 years and got to come in and retrain everybody and re-choreograph the show.
Oh, cool.
So I would have met you earlier. You made a wonderful Red Sonja.
So
there's Chelsea
Gary.
Field.
Yes, Chelsea, right. So Chelsea, you want to talk about just working with this cast, John Cypher, Billy Barty, Dolph Lundgren, and just kind of how you approach the role of Tila?
Well, all of my acting training had been method, so I think I had a total of like 7 lines in this movie, and I went over those 7 lines so much that it was ridiculous. I wish I could redo it, but working with John, I'm still very close with him. He's an amazing man and a wonderful actor. He lives up in Ashland right now, and he's just so much fun. We got really, really close. Billy was amazing. Dolph was I didn't get really close with Dolph because he worked so much, but he was a wonderful man. And Courtney, Robbie McNeil, John, and James Tolkien. That kind of group, we used to hang out a lot, and Gary, we'd hang out a lot together and do dinner parties, and we just got to be really close. And still, I don't communicate with Courtney too much anymore, or James, but I am really close with
I'm just going to say one
John.
word about Billy Barty while he's on. Billy Barty, who is no longer with us, but that guy was a trooper. You talk about makeup. That makeup, 3.5 to 4 hours every morning, never complained, never had any issues, never threw any fits. Always ready when you needed him, and the greatest jokes in the world. This guy, he had a library of jokes that went back to vaudeville, I think.
Yeah.
Every morning I feel a tug on my coat, and I turn around, it'd be Billy, and he'd have a new joke for me every single day. Every single day.
Really
Now,
good.
Courtney Cox, did she do anything after Masters?
No, she kind of, she kind of just went on her way.
So watching this, you've got the core group. In the movie you got Sorceress, you've got Man-at-Arms, Tila. Orko is replaced by Gwildor here for William and for Gary. Can you talk a little about just how you translated from the cartoon and toys to who's going to be in the movie?
Well, it's a long story, which I could spend a long time on how we adapted this, because the original script, the script opened in the kitchen of Courtney's house, and there was a banging on the door, and this strange warrior, He-Man, is beat up and tired, and he falls in unconscious. It goes from there. The whole thing really takes place on Earth. We didn't have these Eternian bookends, and I felt if we're going to do this story, if we didn't have the budget to go to Eternia for the whole movie, which is why they came up with the device to go to Earth, I thought maybe there's a way to bookend this, so at least it has a feeling of Eternian, and we know who they are before they come to Earth, and we get some sense of all that. And I thought I'd give it more of an epic canvas to work on. So with that in mind, then which characters? To answer all your questions before you answer about these two, Orko and Battle Cat, there was no digital animation back then, so they would have had to have been stop motion animation or a little person on wires. And on the budget we had, the schedule we had, no way we could do those. We didn't eliminate the characters, they're just back on Eternia. So we used the idea that since these characters come into Earth, we can pick and choose which ones that we wanted to have. And we created that little group because if you analyze it, I made Man-at-Arms a little older than he normally would be in the cartoon because we wanted to have the young, vibrant hero. We wanted to have the beautiful and smart and very, very capable woman that was there as well.
Woman-at-Arms.
Yes, and we wanted to have the comic relief that Orko provided, and hence Gwildor. Although Gwildor has a role, he's not just comic relief. He created that whole device that lets us jump through, space and time. And so all of this was very deliberate. And the same thing on the evil side. Evil-Lyn is much more of a secondary character in the cartoons, at least originally. But we had Frank, and I wanted the foil for Frank, to be equally as strong in her own way. And I think you see in the movie, Frank and Meg are like, just amazing when they have scenes together. And we were writing scenes for them because again, I don't want to put down the original script, but the original script had more of that cartoon-like Skeletor, which says get him, seize him, destroy them. And I promised Frank if he did the role that we would build that role up. And then I wrote that entire, the ticking clock of turning into a god and a thing, and I went to Bill. I said, I need a Jack Kirby kind of god. I am a god, and so every, again, I'm talking fast, but all of these characters were specifically picked to form an interesting little group, and I had to give Mattel the outline. I walked them through the outline of Wizard of Oz and Star Wars because they wanted 25 characters. They wanted Trapjaw and this guy and the meteor guys and all this stuff. And I was like, guys, first of all, we're on Earth. If we're on Eternia, maybe we could work in these characters. But we're coming to Earth and we can't bring everybody. And then because of our production, I decided to create these new ones that were basically humanoid. Even Sorod is still it's an actor in a suit. It didn't require CG, which didn't exist then. It didn't require wire work. It didn't require all these crazy things. So that was the genesis of the new characters, of the mercenaries.
Meg, do you want to talk a little bit about just working with Frank and how you two, was it just strange to be in these costumes and on this giant set and you're opposite Frank Langella in a skeleton mask?
No. It's really sort of extraordinary. I'm not very good at talking about these things, but because once you're surrounded by those beautiful sets, and it's like being a part of a painting. It's extraordinary. This whole hallway. It was, how many feet was it went down, honey? How much feet was it down with the smoke came up?
It went up and down. Bill should up. It's.
Do you remember? Because we were higher and the floor was down there.
Gigantic. The idea behind it was that there were these what we called the space gods at ground level and above, and then gargoyles and horrible creatures below. The idea, if this is the seat of power for all the universe, power is neither good nor evil. It's what you make of it. So it addressed both the good and evil aspects of power in the design of the set.
Right, and each of those figures, one was the philosopher, and one was the scholar, and one. Yeah, so even the big statues there, everything here had meaning.
Yeah, and all that beautiful marble you see, that's painted plywood.
Yeah.
But it's extraordinary because you enter as a human being, as an actor. It doesn't matter if you'd stepped on the set, you'd feel like you were there. It becomes. We were embraced by so much art and such wonderful words and characters. It's extraordinary.
I started in Shakespeare at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego, and walking on the set was truly epic. You just felt like I'm in something Shakespearean. It was really wonderful. Thanks, guys.
And what happens is it sort of washes over you. It's just extraordinary.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
But the reason why I was asking about the depth, because when I was walking down, we were filming, and it was in this room, and Frank was sitting here, and Evil-Lyn was directed to come around and go down the little stairs, and I went down and I had on the 35-pound cape, which was the first time I'd ever worn the cape. Just absolutely extraordinary. Julie Weiss did, creating us, just extraordinary. And the cape got stuck. And so I continued walking, but what happened, the cape was so heavy, my feet went out from under me.
Oh.
Do you remember this?
I am remembering it now.
My feet went out
tend to
from under
black
me,
those
and I
things out,
started
but
sliding like a bullet toward how it was, toward the edge. That's why I was asking where the depth was. And the what do you call it? The breastplate held me from here, so I couldn't sit up. It bonded me like this. I was going
Like a bullet.
like this, and I passed. You were standing over here with the other gentleman, and I went, I can't stop myself.
There she goes.
And this one went, oh my God, and he ran and stopped me with his foot. It was amazing, but I thought I was headed towards with all this. Headed towards the puddle.
Evil-Lyn.
No, you didn't. No. I mean, I knew I would be saved by the blade. But
Hey, Chelsea, really quick.
But-
We just saw you jump into a portal. Do you remember just what was it described to you, what you're going to be seeing, or just kind of just go jump in here and then we're going to
I don't remember where we did that.
We did that.
Where would we have done that? On a green screen or something?
We did that. I think we did it on the stage with a green screen. Didn't they? They put the mats there, and yeah, then they put the
Yes.
green screen up and they shot
Yes.
it. We shot it on the stage, but you're right, with the green screen.
Yeah.
But they put the green screens up in the general area where you were, and they put the
Mats down.
Yeah.
I know that those kinds of things in the movies were so seldom compared to my audition. All of my auditions in Gary's office, where I was jumping over a couch and then rolling on the floor and hiding behind a chair.
Don't forget
and,
when we went
and
outside.
pretending pew, pew, pew,
Yeah.
and making sound effects for myself with a laser gun. It was so ridiculous, the auditions, but I just kept doing them, that when I had to do something like that, or I remember when we were in Whittier and we had to, when you were, when Evil-Lyn and Skeletor come down and we're in Whittier on that rooftop and we're having to look up, all that quote unquote pretending that we had to do was nothing compared to my audition. So it was a relief to actually have real actors and real characters to work with, and locations and sets and such.
Well,
This was shot at the Paramount Ranch.
that's right. This
Yeah,
part, yes.
that's
Been
right.
Tons of movies have been shot there.
Yep.
For William, do you want to talk a little bit about just kind of the evolution of some of these costumes and armor and kind of how you approach it? And I guess kind of like, what was the prep for this movie? How long did you have to kind of get all these sets and things done?
Well, originally I wasn't the production designer. I was originally hired to storyboard the film. But I started doing stuff on the side that Gary responded to, and the more stuff I did, the more excited Gary got. And then Gary and the original production designer weren't exactly seeing eye to eye, and then he left, but recommended that I take over as production designer. And so suddenly I had this massive job, and began with designing the sets that we were going to shoot in first.
How long
And,
was the
well-
original schedule for this film, Gary?
Original schedule was who knows? No, just kidding. I think it was 12 weeks. It was 12 weeks, and I think we went over a little bit. Didn't we?
Oh yeah, let's just a little.
All the actors loved me because they got paid. Once we went over, they got paid extra.
Oh man, that overtime and that golden time and those meal penalties.
But what I was going to say about Bill was Bill and I had a common vocabulary. He knew who Jack Kirby was, and we knew all the artists. We knew you could just say this is Frazetta like, this is Kirby like, this is such and such. And on top of that, Julie Weiss did a great job executing the costumes. But when she was designing them, she did not have any idea. She was doing a lot of those Breakfast Club movies, kids, teenagers, and so she was that kind of costume designer. Creating a world, a whole different world, wasn't her thing. But I knew Bill could do it, and I said, Bill, you've got to start doing some of these costume designs. And Julie came in to complain. I said, Julie, you're going to get total credit for these designs because you're the costume designer. No one's going to take that from you, and you're going to execute them. But honestly, Bill understands how to create a world, and that's not your thing. It's not a bad thing. You just need to execute. And she finally said, okay, you're right, I get it. And she executed them brilliantly. Absolutely.
Yeah. I never knew that.
And I told her, I said, look, Julie, 30 years from now, when people look at the credits, it's going to say costume designer Julie Weiss. It won't have my name there.
I'm sure she got 10 other sci-fi films after this because of that.
So we just had Courtney Cox introduced. Anyone have sharing any stories or anecdotes about working with her?
Robbie's Ribs and Chicken. Now, this is a real
Is that a real
downer.
place? Or was.
That was a real fast food place in Lakeview Terrace that I transformed into Robbie's. It was named after my art director, Robert Howland. The bizarre, kind of spooky thing of this place is that's where Rodney King was beaten.
A little film history for you today.
In front of that restaurant.
Anecdote. Courtney, the casting director, she brought in Courtney. She said, I want a girl who's like homespun, just blah blah blah. Oh yeah, I want you to see this girl, Courtney Cox. She's the girl in the Springsteen video. That's how
what
Courtney
she was
always
known as,
got
the
introduced.
girl from the Springsteen
I said, okay.
video.
So she and Vicky Thomas was the casting director. I think she's perfect for the role. Blah blah. She brings her in, and Courtney was very nice, but she came in like a lot of actresses do, looking very sexy, looking very adult, eye makeup and hair done and dressed to the nines and everything. And I had the interview with her, and she read, and I said to Vicky, Vicky, I don't know. I mean, she's nice and she's great, but I don't think she's the character at all. She's not right for it, And she goes, we talked a little bit, and she says, let me bring her in again tomorrow. I said, okay. She called Courtney and said, no makeup. Just come like you're going to college. Just come like come in blue jeans. Don't dress up. Just be casual. Courtney came back in that day, and we interviewed Red, and I walked out and said, "You're right. That's her." And we cast her. Yeah. So, but Vicky gets the credit for bringing her back and knowing to say, get rid of the makeup, get rid of all that. Just be yourself.
And Vicky Thomas became a phenomenal casting director. Right after us, she began working for Francis Ford Coppola.
We just got introduced to Robbie. Kevin. Sorry about that. Robert Duncan McNeil, who went on to direct a lot. Anyone want to talk about just working with him and the young kid?
He was great to work with from my perspective, and he was. It was down to two guys, and we tested them both against Courtney because Courtney had already been cast, and they had the right chemistry. So.
You're not supposed to be here.
I had the great pleasure to work with Robbie again on Star Trek Voyager.
Oh, you
played Maj
right.
In 5 episodes of that, and then he went on to produce a show called Chuck. And I had a chance to come in and die horribly for him, as has been my want through most of my career. But he's a terrific guy.
This is a great scene. Always makes me want to have chicken and ribs.
Is that what they're
The
having?
grappling hook coming up here.
They're in the bushes.
I used to stage a lot of action for, I staged action for LA Opera for 20 years. I used to work the theaters downtown a lot, and I got to work with Billy again at the Mark Taper Forum.
Oh, you did.
And just terrific, and enormously physical. It's even at his age at the time, which was just about 15 years ago, he was still very spry.
Yeah, he was in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, yes.
He was one of those in the nest. He's one of the little Munchkin kids hatching out of the eggs.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
We talked about world building earlier, and this is a great kind of the fish out of water story here. So, if they're not used to eating animal protein on Eternia, did you have it worked out what they did eat, and how does He-Man maintain his gains, if so?
We thought they were enlightened and therefore had left this behind long time ago. It was a brief discussion, but it was also a good chance for a gag. So,
Yeah, I think it's one of the great things. There's a very just kind of, there's a great all the way through. There's all the different kind of vocabulary you use and kind of the metrics of time and equipment and that kind of thing. I think it really just helps separate it. There's no trying to put on a trench coat and be an earthling.
A lot of those happen on the spot because we get to a certain point, like when they're going to say goodbye to each other and split up, and they were going to say goodbye, and I said, "Oh yeah, that sounds really like you're just, and then so we came up on the spot with "Good Journey." And then instead of a handshake, since that's what can we do? So a lot of those moments, instead of saying seconds, metrons, and all these things, were when we're there and you're hearing it, and you go, okay, you can't say that because it's like, it doesn't sound like you're from somewhere else.
Too earthly.
So a lot of those things actually kind of happen on the fly.
I would say later we'll see. I think Chelsea did the best Good Journey. It was so heartfelt every time you do it. So.
It's because she was exhausted.
Yeah. And Langella came up with some of his own lines too. I remember.
What happened with Frank?
A Curious Quartet.
Yeah, and that one was on the set. That's right. But he came to me and said, "I want to say this." I said, "Okay, do it. Let's shoot it." I was always like, "Okay, let's try it. Let's shoot it." So, the thing is, when Frank read the script, it was that draft of get him. And I promised him. I said, "No, it's going to have an arc. You're going to turn into a god at the end." Because all this was in my head. and I promise you we're going to give him depth. And so all during those first few weeks of pre-production, Frank was getting little scraps of things from King Richard and this, and I was getting scraps of things, and I wrote that monologue, that whole monologue for him about the power and all that kind of thing. And basically, Ed would not approve any rewrite, Ed Pressman. So, but while we're shooting, you know, I just, 2 nights before, I get with Frank, what about this? Okay, let's do this again. I would type it up, and I'd hand them out to everybody. The script girl would put this in the thing. That's how we'd shoot it. That's how that all happened.
Here, let me try it.
Can we talk a little bit about the Cosmic Key here? I guess basically, you know, kind of what was the path of using kind of this music entry portal gateway thing?
That was in the original script. Not that item, but the idea that he was a musician, and that the idea that there were some tones and stuff. And I was a fan of Jack Kirby and the Fourth World. I knew about the boom tube, and so this idea of them transitioning here was already in the script. But I wanted to create a clearer way, a clearer path for the audience to how it was being done. So we built up upon the character of Kevin, who was already a musician. That was in the script, and we made this thing the way forward.
Meg, rewatching this recently, you have such poise and presence and such a calm speaking demeanor. Is that something you were trained, or is it something that you're naturally, or?
Watch her here.
You won't be lonely long.
Oh, we missed it. It was right before this. It's where he tells you you'll lead them, and
demeanor. Well, yeah, I don't know. I entered a world that I was put in, and it's very interesting. I haven't seen it. Do you know? And I had such a lovely, lovely time. Frank and I didn't speak a lot. We were all, but we worked together. And it's a whole different thing. So there's something very precious about seeing this. I don't mean precious, but to revisit it all these years later is sort of a little overwhelming and lovely at the same time. But insofar as with the wardrobe,
I'm going to amp
this gentleman design.
All right, you ready?
No,
I get
truth.
all the perks.
All right, here goes.
that
I
moment,
don't know how to say
that
it.
moment
You
between
become
you,
you become something, and something seems right.
that moment between you and Frank, though, at the throne, when you're kneeling there before the mercenaries
sir,
come in.
yes.
I remember you. You may not remember, but I do remember. You and
will.
Frank worked that all out. I just shot it. You and Frank had a private moment there. You were working it all out.
I'm glad you remember.
I let you work it out. Then you guys played it for me. I said, "Don't change the thing. Let's shoot it." And I shot him this over your shoulder and you over that, and that was it. That was it.
That's a great director.
Yes, it is.
That high school dance set that was shot at Venice High School.
Yep. Which we almost burned down.
Gary, why was the band called The Illusions?
The band was called The Illusions because that was my band in high school.
We've got the Curious Quartet coming up here again. So basically, I guess same thing, kind of, you know, you have Beastman, but then you also have Karg, Rod, and Blade, of course. Kind of take us through, like, did you consider any of the villains from the TV show at all? Or?
Yes, Mattel sent me all of the villains. They sent me everybody. I had a box of toys, and I looked at all of them and said, okay, which one of these would work on Earth? Which one of them could we put in an Earth setting and it wouldn't be laughable, you know, and how would we do this, and how would we do this guy? And eventually, for a myriad of reasons, a whole bunch of them were just forget about it. They might work on Eternia, they won't work on Earth. Then other ones were eliminated because they would be too complex to try and figure out how to make them work in a believable way. And eventually, Beastman, of course, that was the one that we could do, because Beastman, and all we tried to do with Beastman was make him a little realer than the cartoon, and what Bill and I imagined was that he comes from a race of creatures like him. There's a place on Eternia where they're all like him. So the armor he's wearing and stuff is to suggest that he comes from a different tribe, a different area. Our whole idea was that Eternia was kind of like a space version of Lord of the Rings, right? It's this place with all these different kinds of creatures and people. When we imagine it as a live action picture, I mean, you really have to turn things around a little bit when you adapt these things to live action. And even if you were to do Eternia and put them on Eternia, you would still do some adaptation for a live action version, I think. But add to that they're on Earth, and you have to limit the number of characters, and you have to make it believable while they're there. Those were all factors that we had to think of.
In regards to Beastman, if there are any close-ups of his pants, you'll notice there are handprints on the pants. And the idea was that when he left his
Those were
tribe,
Bill's handprints.
when the Beastman left his tribe, each of his generals put their handprint on his pants to give him their power in his forthcoming battle.
For Anthony, we're going to come into a sequence with you're featured quite prominently. You want to talk about a little bit of just kind of your training for the film and then wearing the costume, and then you trained Dolph with the swords, right?
I did. I had a wonderful time with Dolph. I got to train him for about 3 weeks, and then I didn't see him for a month. And the first thing we shot after that was the fight sequence, coming up. I kept saying, when can we get down there and take a look at this? And coordinator Walter Scott said, oh, there'll be plenty of time, And first thing we shot was the fight. So I said, remember that stuff I taught you a month ago? Yeah, we're going to do that here. My wardrobe was interesting. Meg was talking about it really helps an actor when you get wardrobe. It gives you something to help you transform into a character. Mine was head-to-toe surgical rubber, which they fortunately took the arms out. And unfortunately, I didn't have any hair because it was my chainmail.
Hold on,
was,
it's one of your big moments. I just want you to see it. Watch it. You're coming up.
With the swords?
Yeah. Look.
Oh, I know.
Here you are.
and we get the little flip because this is actually practical.
Yeah.
She's underneath the stage, and Gary had the shot set up, and he just said stab through the floor. So I went okay, and we did that practically. We did everything practically. I was thinking about this last night.
I love it.
My chainmail was 10 6-foot lengths of pipe cut into 1/4-inch pieces. Julie, it's a gorgeous design. It hangs really well, and it was difficult. Fortunately, I'd had ballet, and ballet is what saved my knees. I also, when they put the shoulder pads on me, that we did practically. I went, well, I guess I won't be doing any shoulder rolls in this wardrobe. I'll save those for Chelsea. Yeah, this was such a fun character. And that was also practical.
Yep.
And this is still Venice that you're burning down the gym?
This was very interesting because they gave us a safety talk right before this, and they said, okay, we're going to actually light this fire, and if we should get some smoke, here's your exit, and get out. And they lit the fire, and the smoke went up, and then it came immediately down, and everybody had to vacate. So fortunately, you got the shots you got.
Yeah. Yep.
And then Chelsea, you're going to be coming to the rescue here pretty soon. Do you remember just kind of, was this just a weird experience because this is your first major film, or your first film? It's a pretty big movie, and you're in costume, you're shooting fake lasers and all this kind of stuff and running around. Was it just fun, or is it weird, or how do you feel?
Yeah. I'm sorry, just a quick interject.
Yeah.
That was also practical.
Yep.
They said there was no rehearsal. They had the fence. They sprayed it
we
with
only
some
had
liquid
two of them,
nitrogen.
so you only had 2 shots.
Yeah.
If you messed it up, that was it.
We did it in one, but it was just like, okay, and you actually cut through the fence. Love practical action. Sorry, Nico.
Well, no, I actually have a question for Gary because I remember doing a lot of broadsword training, and I think I was there during those 3 weeks. I think when you were training there, but then something happened, and for some reason, because both John and I did broadsword training, but then we dropped the swords and only had the lasers. What happened?
He said you weren't good enough.
That's what I thought.
I did.
Was this Whittier?
Were you working?
This was this is in the back in Whittier, that parking
Well,
lot
I
in the
did
back.
work with Lauren a lot,
Yeah.
but did Lauren do the sword training?
Lauren started. Lauren was supposed to be the sword trainer, and then Lauren said to me, "You know more about this than I do. You train
Well, I
Dolph."
think maybe I did
I don't
work.
recall our
You
working.
don't?
Here comes your big moment. Blade.
Oh, yes, and this we also did practically. Dolph picked him up and threw him at me, and I went, "Oh, great! So I'm going to get to catch this guy." And we're on a concrete floor.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a pixie dancer either.
I mean, for something like this with Dolph, I mean, he's like 0 body fat here. Is he just working out all the time, and you have to kind of work around his schedule to make sure he's in tip-top shape?
No, because he took care of himself. He did have to eat, like he would eat small amounts all night, doing night shifts. Every 2 hours, his little assistant, whatever his name was, would bring him, I don't know what he was bringing, fig Newtons, I don't know. Yeah.
He would complain too. He says, "I train all week and I starve myself, and then I have a glass of wine and it all goes to hell."
And then how much of this movie was shot at night?
A lot.
A lot of night
This
shoots.
was 6 weeks down in
Well, this
Whittier.
is the.
Okay.
Well, if there's
My
anything
favorite
you want to
line.
say, go ahead.
I waited a long time for this. See, it was in my head. It wasn't in the script, but I always felt that He-Man was the one that took my eye. So there was a little bit of a revenge and a rematch in this.
How much do those swords weigh? Do you remember?
Well, Buick's Lair, which was the power sword, was pretty hefty. I have one of them left. I had donated one of my blade swords to a charity a few years back. I believe it's in Germany now. But the other one I have, so anybody who wants to come by and get a picture with the blade sword, we can do that.
Oh, I have Skeletor, sir, but I didn't bring it. So I've got
I remember
Skeletor.
that was hefty too.
For Chelsea, Meg, and William, did you keep anything from the set or from the movie? Souvenirs?
I kept all the art.
Oh, cool.
Mel kept, Meg
Okay.
kept the costume, but she only used it on Saturday nights when she was going out.
No, but it's amazing because people do ask that. But back then, they weren't. People didn't. You've never crossed your mind to.
Right, that's true.
No.
It was, never. So
Absolutely.
I have
to
the
know.
chest piece. I do
to
have the blade
crown.
chest piece.
That's
that.
cool.
I have that.
Because the chainmail ended up in, the thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Commando. I went, and it also ended up in a Jean-Claude Van
And
Damme
Cyborg,
movie
right?
that Albert Pune did. Yes, Cyborg. Because I was supposed to do the film, and then the schedule went weird, and I did something else. And I'm going, that's my blade armor.
Oh, I was up for that role.
That's right.
For Charlie? Nice. What happened? Bad audition?
Horrible audition.
This is where we
Jump over the
realized
couch,
Bill was
eh?
a production designer.
Yeah, stick with the paints, kid.
And this is all downtown Whittier, right?
Yep.
Yeah, which is not there anymore. It was destroyed during the Whittier earthquake.
Earthquake, yeah.
Yeah, that entire street.
I have very fond memories of 6 weeks in Whittier. We would shoot nights, so it meant I had hit traffic both going to and coming from. And you had bought me an electric razor, so I would sit in the car and shave my head and look at people, with a very angry, menacing look, because this was before it was very popular to have that do.
The problem we faced was this is a little example of how Canon was penny-wise and pound-foolish, because they didn't want to use a back lot. They wanted to use a real street because they thought it would be cheaper. But it's night shoots. So the deal they worked out with Whittier was that we could have the street at sundown, and then we had to have it clear for traffic again by sunup. So this meant that the first 3 to 4 hours of every night of your shoot, when the crew arrived, was just setting up the lighting, the cables, the generators, running everything.
Not getting anything
So you
shot.
can't get anything shot. A lot of times we got nothing shot until after the dinner break, because it took the entire first 4 hours just to get the lights and all the cranes and all the stuff back up. We'd be lucky if we could get one shot off before dinner, and then suddenly we had to break, and then we only had from after dinner till the sun came up to finish, because then they had to clear it all out so that the Whittier Street, because we were right there on their main street. But one night with Meg came in. I said, we're going to get your shot before midnight. Get in. So she came in. She got. Do you remember this, Meg? Oh my God.
So.
Yeah, it has a happy ending, but
I know it does.
it's the shot. It's the shot where she's Skeletor has basically just said, "Get your crap together and make this happen," and she's not happy. And she walks in the camera. The camera booms up to catch it down, blah, 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 that kind of thing, and it's a reveal. But it was a very important moment, and she did use her inner anger for it. It worked very well. So, in fairness to her, yeah, we had her suit up so we'd get this shot before dinner, but we didn't make it. So now we're through dinner. And she's like, when are we doing this? Jerry, when are we doing this shot? I said, well, I'll try and make it the first one if I can. But, we get there. No, it couldn't be the first. We had to do this, we had to do that. She comes to me. Oh, no, she sends, you had your assistant. And he says, Meg would like to know when her show. I said, well, I'm trying to get it. Just tell her to stand by. So she's in her garb, the whole time, waiting.
Sit down, darling.
Or
So-
go to the bathroom, right?
Or go to the
Or
bathroom.
go to the bathroom, yeah.
So
Go to the bathroom in mine.
essentially the whole night goes by, and we're right before sundown. And now I finally say, we're going to get the shot. So they let her know. She comes over. I'm there getting ready. And she says, Mr. Goddard. I said, look at her. And she goes, just this stream of obscenities. I have waited on this. Blah, 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 my face like this. As she finished, I went, yeah, can we get the shot? She goes, yes. She goes, and we got the shot. So the shot is in the film, and you actually now, if you know that, you can see She is into that moment.
It was not acting.
Dear God.
Now we've got Mr.
No, it was great though.
No, but there was this incredible night where. Well, we were just saying when you were talking about getting everything set up, plus everybody's makeup on.
Yeah.
I mean, it took forever, hours.
Yeah.
Well,
Sometimes you'd be ready before everybody else was ready. But when, it was
That
really
particular night, you were there, ready to go, and I had basically promised you we'd get the shot before dinner. But you
okay.
can't really promise
Almost
those things
the sun
because
almost was coming up. It was
Yeah.
okay. I'm sorry, I was so rude.
No, but it was great. The transition, you just had to see it. She was screaming in my face, and then I said, "Yeah, okay, you're right. Can we get the shot?" And then she just went. She's total professional. She goes, "Yes." She walked off. It was great.
One of my favorite memories about the 6 weeks shooting down, nights in Whittier was we would arrive at set, and one night I had a slightly later call, so I came in and it was all fogged in, and they had all the lights set up on this giant. It was about the size of this, and that they would. Up in the in the air with the crane, and it was so foggy it went up and it disappeared, and it was like the mothership. It lit everything up. It was just like it was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It was really cool.
That was when we were on the roof. Yeah.
The wonderful thing in Whittier too, when we were on the streets, the wonderful thing is that before it began, the second you arrived to set up. And it was the night that Skeletor comes down, and everybody goes running up. The parents of the children in Whittier, they brought their little ones in their little bathrobes with their teddies, and and the older ones. And these children, I mean, that's why I was just so thrilled because it's for kids.
Right.
I never got to do anything for children in films with them.
Now,
But
this
it
is the
was,
moment. That's the scene. You and Frank worked out yourself.
Holding my neck.
And I said, "Fine, take your time." And you did it for me. I said, "Great, let's shoot it." And this is what I said. I'm going to move in on Frank, and then I'm going to come around to you.
For you to rule completely, he must be destroyed.
I remember.
Hey, man. If I kill him, I make him a martyr, a saint. No, I want him broken.
And a second ago, we got introduced to James Tolkien from Back to the Future and Top Gun.
Those are the holes.
We saw him a minute ago.
Yeah. Any memories of working with Mr. Tolkien?
Yeah. But watch this, because this is another moment for Meg, because she tries to defend them, and then he says, "Okay, you're in charge now."
We trace the key's signal, but were unable to take possession of it.
Is that all?
We fought with the Eternians, but were outnumbered. We thought it wise to return alive and gather a larger force.
Set He-Man free! You are all aware of the penalty for failure.
Give me one more chance, Lord Skeletor, and we will succeed.
I am not in the giving vein this day.
King Richard.
Really, how was working with that eye patch?
He begs your forgiveness, as do we all. We live only to serve.
Oh, this is the scene, right? Yeah.
It would be a pity to waste their talents.
Save your pity for yourself if you fail. Take them and whatever troops and resources you need.
I was not suggesting that I go.
Then you should not have spoken. Leave immediately. When you find the key, send a sourcing signal. An attack force will join you, or I will follow. Go!
Yeah. So great.
Was that your Good Journey, or the evil version of Good Journey?
No. That was just, thanks for not killing me.
All All right, so here's James
the eye
talking
patch.
again.
When they first showed me the costume, and they said I was going to have an eye patch, I said, I have to sword fight. I have no depth perception with this, so I got them to drill little tiny pinholes in it, and then I could see enough through it to where I still had depth perception. So that helped a lot. Robert Tower, who plays Karg, he's a terrific actor. He again revisits, back to the Conan show.
That's right.
He was one of the great sorcerers. That he was the narrator of the whole thing, and so it was great fun. And in that makeup, he was kind of fun to watch at mealtime because he would cut things into little tiny bites, and he had a little kind of like a pickle fork that he'd spear things and he'd kind of work it away in the makeup so that he would be able to eat. And I should project into the mic. Yes, sir.
Don't do anything. God, I've got so much to explain to you. All right, just stay there. We'll be right there, okay?
Do you remember where we shot the exterior of Courtney's house? Was that Pasadena or Sierra Madre?
I think it was Sierra Madre.
Because the interior was Paramount Ranch.
Yep.
It was the house that was built for the Cary Grant film called Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House.
No one here knows that one.
You know. Wonderful film.
While we have a lull, I can talk about Lubick was the voice of the audience basically, and again, going back to Jack Kirby comics, he always had that kind of gruff cop, detective, sergeant, someone who was representing, what we're all thinking, like, what the hell is this thing? What is this? And so he was ideal for that, I think. But I want to tell you one thing about the big throne room. The way we got the throne room, because when I said I wanted to build this big throne room, they were like, no way, because the budget, blah blah blah. I don't know if you know this, Bill. I showed him Bill's sketch and I said, look, we're going to shoot approximately 20 minutes of the opening here, and we're going to shoot approximately 30 minutes or more of the finale here. So think about this. Think of all the locations and all the stuff we're going to lose. We have one set which we're going to shoot practically an hour's worth of the movie on. So it's worth it. It's a controlled situation. It's not the streets. And you know what? They thought about it and they said, okay, you're right. If you're going to shoot that much of it there, it's justified. That's how we got that big set.
And was that true? Was that how much of the...
It was about, if you analyze how much of the movie happens at the opening and closing, the bookends, yeah. About 40 minutes or so. Yeah.
That's pretty great. I mean, that's a long time.
That's how we got them to spend the money.
Yeah.
And then at what point did you start realizing that Canon was in financial problems, and for the actors too, of just kind of, did you realize that right away, or did kind of Gary
No,
shield
it was
you from
about
that?
halfway through
I
the
feel like it
film.
was in Whittier when we started to become
it was the night shoots.
aware. I'm listening to all of this, what Gary's saying, and I'm thinking, wow, it would have been really great if we knew all of this.
No, it wouldn't have been great for you.
But, not about the Canon money thing, because we did hear about that sort of like, sort of voce and through the grapevine, and people were gossiping and stuff about it. But when we got to Whittier, there was definitely a feeling of like, okay, Gary's like really stressed out. There's way too much going on. This guy is just, hanging on by his fingertips. But I never knew that was the reason it took so long. I'd be sitting in my trailer, or we'd all be hanging out and going, what is Gary doing? Like, what is wrong with this guy?
The big day was the day when I got to the set and Elliot Schick, the producer, told me the payroll has not gone out for the crew, for anybody. And the crew was all out there on the set waiting. And basically they had taken the position they weren't going to work without getting their paychecks, which is reasonable. And but I went out there and I said, guys, look, we're all out here. Elliot is going to go to Canon. He's going to figure out how to get the money. And you're all here, and we really can't afford to lose a day. Can we please shoot the day? And by the end, you'll either have your money or won't. I believe you will. But if you don't, I don't know what to tell you, but we should get this day. I basically pleaded with them. They all said, you're right, we're here. Let's do it. So we got through that day, and by the end, Elliot got the money. I never knew how he got the money until Bill said it in an interview that I saw him in. It wasn't Canon that got the money, it was Mattel. So that's what happened. Whenever we were short, and that happened 3 more times, I guess Mattel...
Well, so Mattel wrote the check.
They ponied up so the production keep going.
They were desperate for this to be a hit and revive the line.
I didn't follow any of it. I just cover my ears.
Right.
I didn't. I mean, it can destroy.
Yeah, exactly. That's why.
Yeah, it's a distraction.
Yeah. But I did that evening out there. One of the reasons why I was so upset, because Billy, who was one of the first ones in the makeup that day, and he hadn't worked, and he had like a itty bitty thing. I was more concerned about Billy. Do you know, because he.
Did you say that to me at the time? I can't remember.
Honey, I don't know, but I. No, I didn't. I didn't.
We're going to get an argument right now.
Well, you know, for Shakespeare quotes, heavy hangs the mantle on the head that wears the crown.
Yeah.
You know, when you're the director,
Yep.
you have to keep all of these things connected and working. And I was never aware of any of this. I just, you know, showed up, did my job, did the best I could, you know, and had a grand time.
Why didn't you direct anymore after this?
My company. I had formed a company before I did this, and when I got back after finishing this, my company was almost out of business. So I decided I would take 6 months to a year to put it back together and then go make another movie. But you know, these things have a way of, you know, we got involved with Sanrio, and I went to Japan, and you know, one thing leads to another, and
Here's a great scene.
I was offered 3 pictures, by the way. I was offered, one was a suicide mission, which I turned down. They were going to replace, the bonding company was going to replace Baron Munchausen, the Monty Python director.
Terry.
They were going to replace Terry Gilliam because he'd gone over budget. And my agent, Marty Baum, calls me, Gabby, this is a great opportunity. You do special effects. You know, you're going to replace Terry Gilliam. I said, okay, that's a suicide mission because I'll be the villain that replaced him.
Which film was that?
It was
Terry's?
Baron Munchausen.
Oh.
Yeah, and I said, whoever does that will be a villain to all of his fans. Secondly, he's very stylistic. He does his movies his way. And thirdly, I don't think anyone can step into his shoes. Without even knowing anything, I'm pretty sure whatever he's shooting is in his head. And I just said, no way, I'm not touching that one. And that's what happened. They tried to replace him. No one.
Yeah.
No one would.
It'd be suicide, career suicide to step into that.
I had dinner with Terry after that, and he had just made Fisher King. And I said, well, how did that go? He says, it went great because of what happened on Munchausen. Everyone was walking on eggshells around me during Fisher King. Anything I asked for, I got.
This is one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, me too. I love this scene. Meg, Blade, everybody.
Yeah, I got to have this wonderful intimate scene with Meg.
Yeah.
Also, one of the few pieces of direction you gave me when Robert Duckman was sitting there. He said, "Give him a good scare." And he went, "Yes, sir." That little piece with the knife next to his head. You know, he wasn't in any danger, but I didn't tell him I was going to do it. So we had a nice little moment there.
Real.
Yeah.
And then Meg, you've been in the throne room for most of the time. Now you're kind of on the streets of Whittier. Was that just a different time? I mean, now you got troops and you've got this helicarrier thing. Do you recall kind of getting off the set and how long that was, or just what you changed up or anything?
How long it was?
Or just any memories of just kind of going from the throne room set to actually onto the streets?
No, it was really great, and we finally did get to it. It was very busy, you know, and there was a lot going on all the time. But it was great. This is the street where all the children were lined up.
Yeah.
With little chairs. Yeah. It was really it was terrific. But things, you know, it's fascinating because the truth is, doing a film like this, then, extraordinary. What they can do now. But if I'm taking all this in, because I haven't seen it, and just seeing the artwork and seeing, you know, all the wardrobe and everything, it's extraordinary for 87. It's extraordinary, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think it's like one of the best. It's not like everything else they can do so quickly now.
You asked about my approach to costume and set design. I approach those like an actor. I write little mini histories of each character to inform me as to what they were in the past and where they are now. And for instance, in Courtney Cox's bedroom, I made sure that her drawers of her dresser were filled with everything that character would have. And then I sat back and I watched. I watched the first time Courtney stepped on the set, and she's looking, and there's the drawings that her character had done posted on the mirror and stuff. And then she opens one of the drawers, and her face just lit up. She goes, "It's me!" It was just wonderful.
He's a method designer.
Things they're so changed.
Yeah.
Little things you did though, Gary. Just that piece as we loaded into the hovercraft there. I mean, we loaded into this beautiful set that you made that is just like kind of a miniature Hollywood bowl. You know, and beautiful. You know, rising out of the clamshell. You know, it's really cool. And all we did was we started to lift. We were just on this little lift, you know, device.
And the camera.
And then you cut to the animation. Works seamlessly. There's Skeletor.
That was a Billy ad lib right
gonna
there.
ask, yeah.
That was a Billy ad lib that was brilliant, where he says, "We can wear these disguises, no one will notice." And his line was, "What the hell is that?" And he goes, "You see?" That was great.
Chelsea, really quick. So basically now you've added a couple of new characters to your little party here. Do you recall, you said you had a great time working with them, but I mean, was it ever tough for you, just like I said, working on a big movie for the first time, working at night? Any memories of that?
Well, the working at night was exhausting. It was, and you'd sort of, in one hand, it's rough, and it was a long time. We thought that Whittier night party was going to go on forever, but but it also, there is a certain isolation that you have, and you feel like you're the only people alive at night, and so there's this kind of this sense of a real team, more so than if you're showing up at Culver Studios and going on the set. And so I mean, that part of the movie that was shot, I actually enjoyed that and remember that more than some of the other parts, just because it was a very isolated but cohesive kind of feeling. I had no idea what poor Gary was going through,
I was actually going to say all the female characters in the movie are very strong, very confident. No one's a damsel in distress per se. Was that just kind of a choice early on? I mean, just basically all these, Evil-Lyn, and of course Tila, and even Courtney Cox here. I mean, everyone, no one's like screaming for help all the time. Everyone's a very strong character.
Yeah, that was a conscious choice, especially with Tila, but also with Courtney. We didn't want to have just exactly a typical damsel in distress kind of thing. So, and as I said earlier, whoever was cast opposite Frank had to be an equal in terms of acting ability and be able to have these scenes where you would believe that she was, if not completely equal, close, right there. And Meg had that power as an actress, and she had those incredible eyes that just like were, whoa, this is like incredible. So, I mean, she walked in and read, and that was it. That's another one where I walked out and said, "That's Evil-Lyn.
Yeah.
Book her. Do it."
I like watching her scene we had just a minute
Oh,
ago.
is this the scene? This
Wonder
is the scene.
Woman has. Go ahead.
Oh, it's the one after this. Sorry.
I was going to say Wonder Woman has her lasso of truth, but Meg has her eyes of no.
So you're shooting at night in Whittier. You've got little kids kind of coming out to the set, or kind of looky-loos, and you're blowing stuff up. So do you ever get any complaints from the city?
No, that one, there's only one big blow up, the one where he says, I gotta get some reinforcements, that one. And that was the one where they had to back everybody down the streets, and that was a entire car trunk full of gasoline, basically, that they blew up. And so they had to move everybody back, and they didn't expect it to, but it did blow out all of the windows of all the businesses on that street. So when they came in the morning, they were like, there were people there to meet them and go, "Sorry, we're going to take care of this, don't worry," But
You had a gym floor you had to redo too.
That's true.
Such a sweet little village. Such a sweet little village that's blow out the window.
But how about, I had a rock band, how about the props people outfitted that entire music store with guitars and keyboards that we basically destroyed.
Yeah, that was good.
All that stuff. That's all real stuff. That's not props that we blew up. You'll see it's going to blow up here pretty quickly.
Chelsea's big line's coming up here. She's going to come save these guys a little bit.
Yep. It's interesting because another penny-wise, pound-foolish. I wanted to get Mickey Moore on to do some of the stunt sequences like this. Mickey Moore did for instance, he directed the entire truck sequence in the first Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he jumps on the truck and goes and gets the
Dave
Nazi.
Stevens and I storyboarded.
Yeah, so Mickey Moore was like the top stunt guy, and he was available and he would do it. They said, no second unit. So I had no second unit, so literally almost every shot here. What we did get a budget on our own. We snuck it in. We got a second camera. We put the stunt coordinator, Walter Scott, in charge of getting some of the cutaways in the disc sequences and stuff. So we had a kind of a jerry-rigged second unit camera, but we never had a full second unit where a big action sequence could be done by someone like Mickey based on boards we agreed to. Like when you see a sequence like that, even with Steven, Mickey Moore did that whole thing. Steven comes in later and does all the close-ups, the lines where Harrison's got a line, he does those. But they agree up front, this is the board, and someone like me goes and shoots it, which lets you concentrate on the rest of the movie. With the exception of these few cutaways during the disc sequence and one other one, every frame of this I shot. What that means is Cannon's paying for a crew and cast of 100 or 150 people to sit around while we get a little shot of, you know, the cosmic key. Or it's ridiculous when you think about the money wasted by not having a second unit on for a few weeks, you know. But that was, again, penny wise, pound foolish, you know. There she is.
If anyone comes near it, you blast him. Do you understand, Kevin?
Now, does anyone now know who this woman is that plays her mother and who her son is?
I was going to ask that. So the actress is Gwen Guilford.
Yep.
She's got a very famous son.
Yep. Does anyone know who her son is?
Chris Pine.
Chris Pine. Chris Pine. Her son. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that funny? And he's here, ladies and gentlemen. No, just kidding.
There's Chelsea's great line, one at arm.
Come on, give me the gun. Yeah, Gwen Guilford. Don't you get it, Lubick, huh? Real life son is Chris Pine.
And the actor who plays Courtney's dad was Walter Scott, our stunt coordinator.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know. Look, we've come this far. We're not about to give up.
I believe this is Gwen Guilford. I think it was one of her last roles. Must have focused on family after that.
This one probably finished. Oh, this is another one where, by the way, low budget helped. This was going to be an effects scene where she goes out and sees her mother, and then she transforms into Evil-Lyn. And by that time,
the money was gone.
Money's gone. So I said,
We were
okay,
looking for peanuts
you're gonna
and
say this line. I'm gonna have her face here, and then I'm gonna come around this side and get you, and then I'm gonna come around again. I'm gonna come around, and then Meg's gonna stand in there. So this is all just cutting. There's no special effects here. And I think it is better, actually, than had we dissolved or that we done a morph or something like that. You know?
Hey! Kevin, stop it!
You have to be thinking all the time.
I remember one early meeting that we were in where you were just being brutalized by Cannon's producers. And it's just like, oh, God, body blow after body blow. And then I had to leave, but I slipped you a note which said, stick to your vision.
So watch this now. So she sees her mom. This is all just cutting. There's no special effects. But you do hear her voice right before we reveal the thing. So you see Courtney's reaction.
All of that, Julie. But we had to disappear. We're doing very important, very secret work. Oh, honey, I've missed you so much. I don't believe it. Mom. Listen, darling. Your new friends are all tied up with the work we're doing, and they have something we want. That shiny metal thing with the blinking lights. Will you get it for us?
Let's talk music for a second. Bill Conti has a great score in this film. Do you want to talk about how he got involved and what your direction and vision was for that?
Yeah, there were 5 composers available, and Bill was one of them, and they all expressed interest in doing it. And I met with 3 of them. I don't remember the other 2, to be honest, but I met with Bill, and I thought, I wasn't sure Bill would want to do this. He was doing big movies then, big movies like Rocky, I don't remember, but all of them. And I met with him, and he said, no, I really want to do this because John, meaning John Williams, John gets to do all these, and I never get these. I always, I've been typed in a certain kind of movie, so I'd love to do a big sweeping score. So I said, okay, well then you're my guy. Let's do it. So that's really how he really wanted to do, kind of an epic fantasy movie, and he wasn't being handed those. He was being handed nitty-gritty urban, kind of things, and he was always great. You can hear his brass, his signature brass is all through this thing, the high trumpets.
Thank you,
Mattel kept bugging me to get designs in advance.
Oh, that was the scene. Yep. So just done with cutting.
Julie! Was that the first time that Courtney's character had seen Evil-Lyn, or he had seen her before? Is that the first time?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was. But she thought she was with her mother. So
right, of course. But I was just curious if she knew.
I think it was the first time she saw her because she missed her at the house already.
Yeah, that's right. She didn't see her. First time.
So Mattel wanted these designs in advance so they could start working on the toys. And there was one thing they kept saying, the character Cosmicky. You gotta give us the picture of the character Cosmicky. There's no Cosmicky in this film. And I did a drawing of a guy in a little flying saucer with Mickey Mouse ears. And then I realized later, oh, they're talking about Cosmic Key.
was Mickey.
I think Anthony, did you get a case of toys from the movie?
What's that?
Did Mattel give you any toys of your character? Because Blade had a figure from the movie, and so did Gwildo, right?
Did I?
Did you get a bunch of toys?
Not until very recently when we got the new toy.
Okay, it's a great likeness, yeah.
It is. The first one was awful.
Yeah.
It was very genetic. And I did a little thing, a little video saying, Blade's in disguise up on his mountaintop, pretending to be a sword master, and
I always like
don't
this
let this
scene.
be my legacy.
I always like him coming out and freeze! All these guns turn him. And then he says,
I think I'm going to need some backup.
What was kind of the line of just making kind of an action fantasy film that was kind of targeted at young kids, like with the action and language like that? There was only one instance. But.
Oh, well, that one instance, we did it both ways. We did Holy Crap, and I really fought for it because I thought it really worked to keep the. But it did cost us a slight number of Christian church fundamentalists who find that kind of stuff offensive. Yeah, we got a few letters, a few churches.
Let's also talk. We haven't talked about all the kind of the shock troops now. The Air Centurions are coming. Want to talk a little bit about that design, and also was that all Boss Studios or Boss Films that did those?
No,
Ed Ike designed the Air Centurions.
Yeah. Actually, Ralph Mcquarrie did some very preliminary. Ralph Mcquarrie was working on Cocoon, Ron Howard's film, and I had tried to get Ralph originally, and he said, "I'm already working on this." So I said, "Okay." So if you have any spare time or something, let me know. And he called us one day and said, "Cocoon's been shut down. I don't know if it's for a week or for a month or forever, but I have some time right now." I said, "Come over." And I told Elliot, "You have to hire this guy. Don't let them talk you out of it." And so Ralph came over, and Ralph did some initial stuff. This was very early on. I think this was when it was still. I think we started pre-production at Warner's, and then we stopped, and then nothing happened for a while. Then the Canon came back in, but during somewhere in there, Ralph came on, and he did some first initial sketches for those Air Centurions. Again, this whole sequence I added. None of this was in the original screenplay, and the Air Centurions I saw pretty clear. And again, if you're a Kirby fan, you know that that's a bit of a. It's inspired by those guys on those jet cycles. I didn't make them cycles, but those guys that.
It's a little bit Silver Surfer.
The parademons, yeah. So. Anyway, so then Ed Ike took those sketches and then developed them out, and I think Ed did this entire. This was all him, wasn't it, Bill, or just you? The actual ship.
Both.
Yeah.
Contact Evil-Lyn.
I think I did the initial design and Ed teched it up.
Yeah.
Great shot.
Yeah. Another budget thing. We were going to have a whole thing where they touched when they were communicating. No money. So I said, we're just going to have a blue light come up on you. And when that blue light comes up, you're communicating with Frank.
And He-Man. That will be all. Air Centurions.
Every bit as good as a hologram.
This is a great sequence. I mean, you've got green screen, people miniatures, and I think you had Dolph on a truck flying
Yeah,
around there,
yeah.
right?
I love this piece here when they break into the building. It's got a good feeling to it. And the whole thing with these soldiers is we had to make them look like robots, not people. Therefore, they exploded. Same thing with the other guys, because I'm sure you've heard Mattel said He-Man can't kill any living creature. He can't kill anybody. So I said, well, he's got to fight someone. I love this, the way the camera works here. Follows her in, and then goes past him, and then into the thing, and then the guy comes by. This is a pretty cool little sequence. There is one little blooper there with the gate,
Oh, the sword falling
Yep,
off?
yep. So I'm shooting all of this, but one of the places where we did use the second unit with the stuntman was this. So Walter shot this, and Walter, not this part, but the one with that, and then Walter shoots this. I'm shooting all the interiors, but Walter shot that, and then Walter shot this, where he gets on the disc and where he takes off. So that's an instance where Walter did get a few shots that we could use, especially in this sequence where we need a lot of cutaways. But anyway, we had to design these guys to look as if they were robotic. That's why whenever they got shot, there would be sparks flying from their things, as if you're not hitting flesh, you're hitting machine.
How fast was he going?
He was going 45 miles an hour at one point.
Really?
Yeah. If we'd hit a bump or something, it wouldn't have been good.
Did Dolph have any reservations, or did he say, was he just game for it? He's still pretty young and early in his career.
Yes.
Okay, I think this is the same. I think this is...
He must not use
That one.
key.
That's the one where she yelled at me right before we got it. I was like, sun's coming up, let's go.
Chasing shadows.
That was the one. Well, we were doing all other stuff. Yeah.
Chelsea, do you recall just kind of working with the laser guns and remaking sound effects, or did you know what it was going to sound or look
Oh,
like?
I had to tell her once when we were filming, stop going boo, boo with your mouth. Because there's no sounds, you know. Hear it in your head, but don't actually.
Oh, so embarrassing.
Yeah, Dolph, we rigged up what's called, what were those shot trucks they were called, right? Shot trucks. And we ran the shot trucks. They're made actually to put cameras on. But we took the camera boom that's on the back of a truck. We made leg braces that could be hidden by his boots. So he had a leg brace that came up to right under his knee, so that was keeping him on the disc. But you couldn't shoot down that way because that. But if that truck had plowed into something or hit the brakes, it would not have held him. He would have went. Probably would have broken his knees and flown through. Yeah, one of my favorite scenes right here, where this comes up and reveals itself.
Not the way to treat your beloved ruler. Throw down your weapons, or you die. Gwildor, you minute minion. I have you to thank for all these troubles. Why? I had such grand plans for you.
I would never knowingly serve the Lord of Snake Mountain. Wait till He-Man arrives. He'll see to you.
Really? I expect him at any moment. Take them!
Just because it kind of shows He-Man's strength, also his vulnerability for his friend, speaking from his heart. Kind of what was the line of making him not Superman so much and making him a little bit vulnerable?
Well, you look for that in every movie. You have to find a moment or two where your hero can be vulnerable. Otherwise, it's not a believable character.
He's not really a hero.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there's no inner struggle.
Any memories how many suits of armor you had to make for these guys?
I have one memory where they almost actually wrenched his back. Right here, you'll see it. We thought he was going to be out for several days. Right there, where that guy fell on him at the last minute. But he toughed it out.
Stay where you are, He-Man. One more move, and your friends will not live to see another day.
Yeah, we had at least 3 duplicates of each costume. It depended on how much work the costume was going to get. A lot of them, we would have 7 or 8 if they're going to be in a lot of action stuff or get dirty.
Or perish with them on this this primitive and tasteless planet.
That was Frank's line.
Surrender your sword.
He-Man, no!
Very well done.
Tila, I have no choice. This is our fight. I don't want innocent people to die.
Well said, T-Man.
Well said, young thespian. Take care of them. Good journey. Good journey.
I feel like Frank really kind of relished his role here.
No, Frank loved doing this role, and has actually said it in a few interviews. It's one of his favorite roles ever. As with Meg, he was inclined to do it because he had a young son who had He-Man toys at that time. But what I love about Frank is, you know, whatever you see him in,
full commitment.
He always commits. He commits 100%.
Yeah, I love him in The Americans.
Yeah. Oh, incredible. But also in Frost Nixon. Frost Nixon.
Oh, it's wrong.
He actually said in an interview that Skeletor, he really said this, prepared him to play Nixon.
Oh.
And he was, no, he was serious, and he gave the reasons.
Oh, totally, yeah.
And Nixon's from Whittier. That's right.
Yes. Yes, I remembered.
There you go.
Wow.
That's right.
Here, cover her with this.
Tila?
She's burning up. We gotta get her some water. Look, there's a fountain down below.
Good. Up.
Okay, move on, let's go. I'll take the west perimeter. Unit 3, you coming from there?
Okay, Lubick. Where's the army?
You shut up. They were here, I'm telling you. It's the damnedest thing you ever saw. All right, everybody, follow me.
Go, guys.
For our actors here, do you have any feeling of just kind of how the movie would play, or like did you ever imagine you'd be sitting here 30 years later still talking about the film? People love this film.
I know people love it, but I never thought that I'd be sitting here.
Yeah, I never thought it'd be this. You know, I never thought it would have this much of a following, and sort of turned into kind of a cult movie. And when there was a screening in Hollywood, was that a couple of years ago?
3 years
or?
ago?
Yeah.
4, something like that.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago, and I went to that, and I had not seen the movie in, you know, whatever, 20-something years, so I thought, well, I better see it if I'm going to be talking about it. And I took my son at the time, he's 18 now, so I guess he was like 15. And I prepared him before saying, it's really a bad movie, honey, it's really bad. Because he's been raised on these special effects, you know? I mean, he's raised seeing all the Marvel stuff and all the new, and I said, it's the special effects, you know, there was no CGI, and it's just, you know, basically we're going, you know, all by ourselves. And,
just like that, actually.
and then I started watching it, and I thought, oh, this isn't bad. This is actually really good. And I kept thinking, oh my God, this was 30 years ago, or whatever it was, 28 years ago. And I was really impressed. And my son leans over about a quarter of a third of the way through, and he goes, Mom, this isn't bad at all. This is really good. So for a young kid that has only seen the most recent movies, it stands its ground, I think.
That was my music comment. That was my comment on music.
Oh.
This is interesting because when we originally did, I remember this. You might remember this.
Tila. Chelsea.
Yes.
Yeah.
So John delivered this line originally like an order. Do you remember? It's where he says, "You better do." And I said, John, I think you gotta have more heart here. You gotta, you're trying to reach into him, not order him.
How did you do that?
And so I think it's coming up right here. He's
If I
gonna.
hear a tune a couple of times, I can usually remember it. Besides, it had a good hook. I was going to use it in one of my songs.
Songs? Why didn't you tell me you were a song maker? Are you a master? Yes, you are. I know that. That's why the fates brought us here. The final chord, Kevin. 20 metrons poleward. Pull it out of the air for us.
Look, you've got the wrong song maker, Gwildor. All right, I'm just a stupid keyboard player in a high school band. There's a million of me.
Only one of you, Kevin. Only one of anybody.
Listen to me, boy.
This one.
In half a chromon, we're not going to have a sorceress to go home to. So if you know how to do something with that thing, then you do it.
So I think those two lines are some of the best in the movie.
Me too. And John thanked me after this scene. He said, "You're right. That was delivery." Instead of shouting like it's an order.
Yes, I think I
And the
can.
message of the movie was Gwildor's line. Only one of you.
I need a few things.
Only one of you.
A Masonic
And that was the line. These are
Right
some
here.
of my lines. That was my line. That was the line I wanted kids to take away. That there's only one of you in the universe. So you have some purpose, whatever it is. You need to find it.
I'll get a keyboard from Charlie's. Look, take care of her.
I would.
I think we just talked about the octode rectifier. And the
Yeah,
necessity.
yeah.
I think you had
Oh, that was funny. Yes.
So, Anthony, did you think you'd be here 31 years later? Watching the film with an audience of fans?
There's your pig boy.
Oh, yeah. He's a Mattel contest winner.
Yeah. By the way, he's become a celebrity his whole life because of that little role, and because
What?
we named him that. Yeah. He's on Facebook, and everyone knows him from this role.
Does he do signings and stuff?
I don't know.
He was here a couple of years ago at PowerCon.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
That's my voice. Pretons.
The final moment has come. All the forces of Grayskull, all the powers of the universe will be
That contest winner was totally sprung on us.
Yeah.
I came in one morning and they said, "Have you got the costume for the contest winner?" I go, "What contest winner?" Half hour later, "Here, Julie, you make the clothes here, you do the makeup."
I was at that screening 3 years ago too, and I hadn't seen the movie in 25 years. And I was delighted.
The audience response was
You know,
phenomenal.
I'd forgotten how good it was, and I'm so pleased it's found the audience that
Yeah.
it has.
Yeah, when-
Because there's some very fine filmmaking in this, Gary, and without the benefit of,
CG.
buckets of money and
Yeah.
lots of special effects, it's character driven.
Yeah, when he at the end when he did "I Have the Power," I thought the roof was going to come off the theater. The audience response was huge, and that's one of the things. You work on a film, you have a good script, and you have good actors and a good director and all this stuff. You never know though, because there's always that missing component, and that's the audience. They decide whether that film is going to live on or die on the spot.
And it's the film that I am most noticed. More people come there anytime and go, "I love Masters of the Universe. It's my favorite film."
That's great.
Very ahead of its time, and I think has more heart and a better villain than a lot of Marvel films.
I agree with you.
And that was my book in, Gary, where, I told you we'd be successful.
this moment when the powers of Grayskull will become mine for eternity. Our lifelong battle is ending at last.
They've been talking about one for years now. They had 5 different directors, 6 different screenwriters, but
when the great
it
eye
hasn't come to fruition yet. Sony's announced
The people
they'll
of
be in
Eternia shall
2019, but they lost the director. It was
kneel to me just before you die.
I'll never kneel to you.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Or I shall wreak unforgettable harm upon you.
Tony, talk about whipping Dolph with a laser.
This sequence was fun. They told me they were going to have this plasma whip, and they gave me this handle that was about 12 inches long, and they said, "You're just going to be doing this." And I said, "Well, I know something about whips. Please film me using a whip so that it will help your animators." And I think I think it helped a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a really smart idea.
Come on, we're moving in.
It's all that rarefied air.
It's the wife.
That's a rubber.
And then, Gary, what was kind of your schedule for editing and then actually releasing the film? Do you remember?
Well, we had a great editor, Ann Coates. Ann Coates worked on a little film called Lawrence of Arabia when she was younger. And she did The Elephant Man for David Lynch, and I could go on and on. She's done some amazing things, and I was fortunate to get her. and she was a great support mechanism for me when I was going through a lot of these shots. We wound up getting the minimal shots needed. Remember, we're shooting basically with one camera almost all the time, and every shot you see we had to set up. So we didn't have the luxury of having 2 or 3 cameras where the editor could choose the shot she wanted from later, with the exception of a few of those action scenes where the stunt director had a second camera. So a lot of nights I'd say, you better come on the set tonight, and you better make sure I get everything you need to make sure this scene cuts. So she'd watch, she'd be very quiet, and then she'd sometimes wander over and go, you know, it'd really help me if you could just come over here and get one. Okay, we'll do it, we'll get it, don't worry. And so sometimes we were kind of cutting on the set to make sure that she would have what she needed, because we didn't have the luxury of larger films where there were 2 or 3 cameras rolling and she could figure it out later.
Kind of coming into the finale here and Skeletor's big speech and transformation. Do you want to talk a little bit about leading up to this?
Where is it gone?
Well, this was the scene I promised Frank. And I wrote that monologue, and he went over it and had a few suggestions. We went back and forth, but basically that to me was the high point, the pivotal moment of the whole thing. And by this time we had worked the whole thing into the drafts. People knew there was going to be the cosmic eye, and there was going to be all this stuff going on. And this, Frank actually said to me, "Did you see what I did there?" I said, "Yes." And what he did there was this. Watch. He knew where the light was. He found the light, and then he worked himself back out of the light into the camera. Right. And after we did that, he said, "Did you see what I did?" I said, "I saw what you did." "What?" He goes, "You tilted back in the light and you brought it in. It was brilliant, and we're going to use it." But he was so proud of that. But he's right, you know, and he felt it as an actor. He knew where the light was, and he knew how to use it to embellish his performance. It's great.
Anthony, something to add?
Stage actor, can find the light. That's Lauren Janes. Lauren Janes, a very famous stuntman in Hollywood. He did in How the West Was Won, came off the train into that big cactus, which was a practical stunt. He also was Steve McQueen's stunt double for about 30 years. Just a nice little addition to the cast.
See, he was supposed to be bathed in a optical blue light and all this, but again, there was no budget. So we just did with the blue light and some smoke. Still worked pretty good, you know, worked. It's all about the performance, you know. Now, I had no cutaways here because I wanted him to do the whole monologue in one, but Ann convinced me we needed a few of these. These were from other scenes, and we added that shadow optically so that it looks like it was part of that scene.
Remember who we had build the gold Skeletor suit? Because it wasn't Western costume, because I was not happy with the stuff they were giving us.
Yeah, and it
was it K&B? Were they around back then?
Was it Robert Short?
Might have been Bob Short.
Might have been Bob.
He did great stuff for us.
We had a fight sequence worked out that we'd done a couple days earlier with the power staff and He-Man's sword. And I said, so he'll be fighting like this, like Skeletor. It'll be before the transformation. And I was assured that was true. And it wasn't. And then the day of, they said, oh, no, this will be after the transformation. So all of a sudden, I have elk horns and the New York skyline on my head. And all the stuff of manipulating the staff around, all of it had to go. And we really had no time, so we basically put it together on the spot, you know, and you made it work. But, surprise! Swinging the staff around that.
You will
Any quick recollections of how the evolution of Skeletor's makeup came about?
Yeah.
Kind of what you were going for?
With countless, we tried everything.
That was a tough one.
We got Westmore on, and we tried hard shell, soft shell, makeup, appliances, teeth, no teeth. We tried everything, and And what we were trying to find, what I was trying to find, was a happy medium that would let Frank's performance come through, whatever it was, and still give the feeling of Skeletor. And so that was the one we arrived at. And we tested a lot of the other ones. When you tried to use a real skull with, you know, like it looks like a puppet, you know, that didn't work. When we tried to do one where we, instead of showing a skull, we showed all the musculature, like Freddy almost, you know, but that's not Skeletor. So we tested that one. So well, that's not Skeletor, that's Freddy, you know. So we did a lot of tests, and this was at the time the best version we'd come up with that would let Frank act, and you still got his eyes, and he could still use his lips and mouth to enunciate. And not that we didn't go in and do some looping anyway, but this was how we arrived at it. It was not a simple thing. It was and same thing on the costume. I think we went through, what, a dozen capes before we got the one that would flow the right way. And Frank was very much a part of all that.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that, because the cape that he finally chose was fantastic.
He has sketches, Bill did sketches of Frank's face with different approaches to the makeup, for the makeup guys, too. We have those somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, does anyone remember like the release and the premiere? Was it a big push, or was Canon and Warner Brothers not really?
Canon had no. Well, Warner's wasn't involved in only Canon. Canon had no releasing ability. We had a premiere that I couldn't be at because I was in Canada doing Captain Power for Mattel at the time. But they had, was it the Chinese or the Egyptians? Where did we?
I think it's the Egyptians.
Yeah. So Mattel paid for the opening event. They rented the theater. They did the whole thing because Canon had no money for it. Yeah. And they had no money to back the picture
cast and
either.
crew had to buy tickets.
Yeah. Wow. You had to buy a ticket?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Meg, do you remember going to the premiere? Meg or Chelsea or Anthony?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exciting times.
I remember, I don't remember much about it other than watching the movie because that was the first time I got to see the movie. So my memory is more about sitting there and seeing my name up on the screen and then watching the movie and watching it, because a lot of it was my stuff. Like, I hardly ever worked with Meg. Sometimes I would see her on the makeup trailer, and I only worked with Frank a couple of times. The one time when we were in Whittier, went on the roof, and that was really the most of a scene that we had together. So a lot of it was separated, and you didn't get a sense of the whole movie. So it was exciting to see the whole thing put together.
Anyone have any recollections of watching the film for the first time?
Well,
I was just really relieved we had a beginning, middle, and end. I was like, wow, we did it.
I like the fact that I didn't die. I just, I take my...
This was added at the last minute, where there's a swing, because this was about the time I was notified, we're going to shut you down. You got 3 days to finish the movie. And it's like, okay, Bill and I had planned a very elaborate sword fight over that whole stage, and I said, that's gone. We'll never get that. So
yeah, it's sad because that set. What I did is I watched all of Anton Groth. He's one of my big heroes, of art directors, and he designed all the Errol Flynn swashbucklers. And I took all the different elements that he had designed and all those and put them into one set.
But remember how they hinged that the day before the shoot, so we could do that? That wasn't in the script. This was a quick ad. What can we do on that set that will add some
punch?
Yeah.
Yeah, you actually have a set that you could sword fight on, too.
That's what it was designed for. So this was added as the quick way to get him to the sword.
Here we go.
Dolph's best moment as an actor is coming up, and I think it was because he was exhausted, but it actually is a great moment. This one here. Not this one, the next line. Watch how good he is here.
You will no longer stand between me and my destiny.
But I will. I told you it was always between us.
Oh, I ache to smash you out of existence. To drive your cursed face from my memory forever. Yes! Let this be our final battle!
So here, I got the boss guys who would only ever set up their 65mm shots if Richard Edlund approved it. When I found out that day that we were not going to be able to do the fight, I begged him. I said, I need one shot when their swords clash, and when those swords clash, I'm going to turn all the lights off in the building to get us into a kind of a dark, nebulous state, and then I'm going to shoot a bunch of footage really quick with our stuntman Skeletor, who's sitting right here, and Dolph with a color wheel behind them, which I kind of borrowed from Escape from New York, and I said we'll cut it together later. So we literally were shut down that night, and I got them to let me keep a Steadicam guy and a light guy and these two guys to do all of this up to here, but all the rest of it from here on was not shot. We had no ending. We had all this footage,
Skeletor,
but we didn't have this.
Anything you want to take us through a little bit of that final fight scene?
So what?
It's just we pretty much made it up on the spot. We showed Gary something. He approved it. We shot it.
We did setup after setup with that color wheel behind. But all of this was shot at Boss about 3 months later, 2 months later. I had to contribute $50,000 of my salary, which Canon matched, in order to shoot all these final little pieces that made up the climactic part of the battle.
So when he turns back into Skeletor, from there till here,
Yeah, all those
was
shots.
shot
It was a
3 months later?
It was a one-day shot. Yep, it was done in.
You probably don't know this. The shot where Skeletor is falling, they put me in a harness and they cranked me up about 15 feet in the air. The harness failed.
No, I did not know that.
And I went, it's a good thing I know how to tuck and roll, because I was headed straight for my neck.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was just.
This was all shot, of course. All this was shot. It was just the battle that there was no finale to the battle.
Look what I got here. I got a castle.
And then was this shot towards the end of the film? So basically, does anyone want to comment on kind of wrapping up the film?
This was done before we left the set, and before the big battle stuff. This was done earlier on so we could wrap the sorceress and a few other people.
Julie, keep this with you, and Eternia will always be near.
The one cut I allowed myself to make that I've always regretted is right here. The finale here, the goodbyes, were modeled after The Wizard of Oz. She actually has a moment with each of the characters, and it was scored for that. And when we did the first preview, people had tears in their eyes. It actually worked. But Menahem kept saying, we don't get to the end fast enough. And I allowed myself to be talked into making that one cut. And if I could restore anything, it would be to restore this finale. It was like when she said goodbye to the lion. She said goodbye. Each one of them had their own moment. And instead, it kind of misses all that. She had a moment with Wildor and a moment with each of them.
Chelsea, yeah, you just did your good journey, very very heartfelt. For everyone on the panel, kind of parting thoughts towards the end of the film, or just watching it again.
You look after it now.
I will.
Activate the doorway, Goddard.
And was there someone on set who oiled up Dolph every day?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Bill did it.
We better get home.
I had to fight that line of girls.
I was going to say, I'm sure there would have been a line of girls and guys probably to do that job. I think for me, my final thought is just like what an amazing job Gary did, and this is the second time I've been on a panel, and every time I do this, I learn more and more about what he did, which we had no idea. We were just showing up and doing our part and our character, and just to hear what he was going through, trying to create the movie, and all of the back political stuff that was happening and budget and everything else. It's really quite remarkable that
it still holds up very well.
Yeah.
It really makes a difference when you've got a leader, because we were all doing the very best we could at every moment that we had on camera, because we knew Gary was watching. And if there was something that he wanted different or better, or if he liked it, it makes a huge difference to an actor. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, well, it was exciting. The whole adventure was exciting.
Meg, any final thoughts or any memories coming back?
Just a great big thank you. Thank you so much.
But
you're extraordinary, sir.
I took great solace halfway through the movie because I happened to read a quote from Truffaut. So if he goes through it, I guess it's the same for everyone, because what he said was, when I start out a movie, I think this is going to be my greatest picture ever. And then it starts, and we get in production, and I start thinking, well, I think it's going to be a very good picture. And then it gets deeper into it, and I start thinking, I hope that this picture will be acceptable. I hope it will find an audience. And the final stage is, dear God, please let me get through this and finish it. That's Truffaut. And I can tell you I went through all of those same things. Yeah. And I thought it was just me, and I read that. Okay, well, if it's Truffaut, it's all of us. You know? Dear God, just let me finish it.
William, parting thoughts and memories of the
Make
film?
another one.
Yeah.
With everybody here.
It's not dead.
Gary, were you consulted when Canon was going to do a low-budget sequel?
No, they had started that on their own.
Everyone knows that, right? So they were going to do a
I
low-budget
thought this
sequel?
was low budget, but then they were going to do one for $4 million.
$4 million, yeah, with Larry Hamilton, the Surfer
This was
team.
huge budget for Canon.
Yeah, no, for Canon. But at the same time, I think this is when Empire was being, right? So the typical budget was 42 to 48 at that time for a fantasy sci-fi action. What was it? 17. 17. And I think Marvel got their idea for the post-credits and sequence from this.
Did you ever think of a sequel? I mean, this was just kind of was that just like a little bit of a joke, or is that something you actually thought, hey, we're gonna come back and do something again?
If I had done a sequel, assuming this was successful, I would have taken it to Eternia. That would have, to me, there's no point to bringing it back to Earth. You've done that; it's done. So the next one would be taking it to Eternia, and now whether that would involve Kevin or Courtney, probably not. That was a convention, but to me, the sequel should have been on Eternia. This was a one-time thing where they. I understand. I mean, if this is true, I don't know. But supposedly, in this low-budget sequel, Skeletor was going to be a businessman running some kind of corporation here. And so, I mean, to me, you just hear that and you go, okay, this would have been really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesse.
All right. Well, I think we're wrapping up here. There's another panel in 2 minutes. Does anyone have any quick question for the panel or anything? Raise your hand. Right here on the end.
I'd like to know what's the translation of Gwildor, because it sounds like something out of Tolkien, you know, along with Randor and Keldor, and like we had Mordor and Gondor, and I wonder if those are translations of Gwildor. I mean, does that mean anything?
Smart keymaker.
Did you just make that up?
Yes, you did.
I totally believed that. You're such a good actor.
There's a credit that was just on the screen for my art department PA, production assistant, Josh Olson, who a few years later got nominated for an Academy Award for a screenplay of his.
For History of Violence, right?
History of Violence, yes.
Wow, nice.
All right, any questions over on this side? One quick question over here. Anybody? No? Over here? Right there.
First off, I was going to say, any other collection of people, this movie would have been You guys literally put all you had into it, and it works. And it's my favorite movie. It's a lot of these guys' favorite movies. Saw it every day after first grade.
Aww.
That's great.
Luckily, my brother worked at the ticketing booth. If there was one thing, like you were saying, Gary, you could add to it, like that one little thing, if you can go back, what one little thing would you add to each of yours that you did?
Well, emotionally, I would have added the ending, and I think we only saved about, it was a little over 60 seconds. It was maybe like not even a minute and a half. But those little personal goodbyes to each character made a big difference. So from an emotional standpoint, I would have liked to have a little more time to improve the Air Centurion sequence, but that was what we had at the time. And lastly, I wish we could have done the big battle, the sword battle we envisioned. You know, because I'm a big fan of Errol Flynn and the Robin Hood and all those things. And Bill and I had worked very hard to create a set that would allow the stunt guys to create like the sword fight of all sword fights with the staff and the sword and the whole thing. And it's too bad that we didn't get to do that as well. But overall, I mean, I really feel it holds up. And recently, it feels like there's a resurgence, and so many people that appreciate the film are now you know, online, and you didn't have that before. And Frank's performance suddenly is, you know, you never see him in the list of the 10 great. But you know the guy that was going to direct the next movie, who's not now, Mick G. Mick G actually was quoted when they asked him about Masters of the Universe. He said, "To me, there's only 3 great screen villains: Vader, Gruber, and Skeletor."
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Well, here comes our stinger, and let's give a big hand to our panelists here. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, it was designed for that.
All right. So one more time, thanks to Gary, Chelsea, Anthony, Meg, and William. Thanks so much for being here. And enjoy the rest of your PowerCon.